Welcome into Sports Around the Bar. I hope I didn't cut it off. I always do it. It always takes that extra second to start on Facebook than it does everywhere else. Guys, we are so happy that you're back, and today we have a lot going on. Obviously, you can tell I'm joined, as always, by the wonderfully talented Hannah.
Hi.
We're talking NCAA today. We're going to talk about this new California law that might shake things up in the college football landscape.
Yeah.
We're also going to talk about Antonio Brown as well as all his new drama, because not a day goes by where we can't talk about him. Hannah, before we get into that and before we get into the NCAA, is there anything you're looking forward to talking about today?
All of it. I mean, kind of sick of talking about Antonio Brown, in my opinion. A guy that is kind of becoming this year's version of Colin Kaepernick, always in trouble, always doing something. But excited to be here. A lot of college football. We're going to break down some of the games from last week. Some of the games we both agreed on would do well. They did. A game that we kind of had mixed opinions on, what happened there. And, of course, we'll be breaking down this weekend football. Don't tune out, because there's some games you may be like, not that interested, but they're going to be good games. So we're excited to be here.
We're going to tell you what to watch in the week that does not have the star-studded matchup of LSU going up against Texas. Yep. You don't get the top 10 matchups, but there's still action to be found. We're going to tell you exactly where you can find it. But first, let's start with Antonio Brown. Okay. We have to do it. We have to talk about him, because it seems like every day it's something new. And seriously, now, I think this broke while we were on the show last night.
Yeah,
he has been charged with sexual harassment with one of his trainers. So going into this, Hannah, obviously he's had a lot of history here. Do you think this is more of a calculated move? Is this someone coming after Antonio Brown when he's already in the news, or is there some truth to this?
Let's back up a little bit. I mean, what was your initial reaction when you found out the Patriots signed Antonio Brown? What was your reaction after being released? I
was like, they colluded. I was like, they've been talking about this. I don't know if they colluded beforehand.
And so the question is going to become, was this planned? Was this kind of a, behind the scenes, wait till he moves? I don't know. Things with lawsuits take a while, especially when it's becoming a federal. When you look at this, how big of a deal it is. This is actually a really big deal. And so it's not just something like, oh, he said, she said. This is taking a while to get to this point. So a lot of things happen behind the scenes. It may be that just was just perfect timing, the perfect wave, perfect storm. But I know that this is definitely not the type of guy that the, Patriots thought they were signing. I really don't. I don't think had this have happened and then they signed him, I mean, what would we have said? Why would they do this, right? I mean, you're looking at this discussion happening all within the NFL. I mean, look at Reuben Foster. Look at a guy who, look what's happened to his career because of poor choices off the field. So, Antonio Brown, I mean, whether or not they're true or not, obviously you're innocent until proven guilty. But if he's proven guilty, I honestly think he's out of lifelines. I mean, I think he's really burned every bridge he can.
Absolutely. Ken, good to see you, man. Ian says that Drew is looking a lot better today. I don't know if there's enough makeup to make Drew look that good, so... Yeah, obviously you can tell Drew's taking today off. He might not be joining us too often on Wednesdays, but we'll see going forward where it's at least with Antonio Brown. I think when you look at this, Hannah, it is innocent until proven guilty. I'm not saying he needs to be suspended, but at least right now, what the NFL has done is anytime anything controversial comes up regarding, any kind of domestic assault, any kind of sexual assault, they've put him on the commissioner's exempt list where he's not allowed to play until the commissioner essentially gives him the okay. Is that the right move? Should Antonio Brown wind up on the exempt list, or are we kind of overreacting? Should we let him go? Because again, it's still just an accusation.
No, I mean, I think the thing's this: when you're in this caliber of an athlete, you kind of have a platform and you have an influence that other people don't. And so I think the NFL, even the NBA, the NCAA, honestly, all these positions have a requirement that you have to. Honestly, they have to set in stone let me think of the word, I want to say prerequisite, but basically this has to be done in order for this to be prevented, because if you let one thing go, it's a loophole of
precedent is what you're looking
precedent,
for.
Thank you. This and that, this and he did this, but I did this. I mean, you have to say no, like there's no tolerance. And I think the reason they do that is because it's not only protecting, that athlete in a way, it's protecting their image. Because the NFL has already endured so much negativity, so much backlash from the decisions they made in the past. I mean, look at Roger Goodell, still the NFL commissioner, still making mistakes, and there's a reason he gets booed every single draft. But the thing is that the NFL has to set a precedent that this is not tolerant. The NCAA, they're working to the same thing, more so with drugs and off-the-field antics like marijuana. I mean, you look at Alphonse Shank Taylor to Alabama when they were caught at night smoking marijuana, had a gun in the car, situations they should not be put in. If you are an athlete, if you're making millions of dollars a year to play a game, a football, you should have enough maturity and enough. Sorry, I'm not trying to dispute. I'm very passionate about this. One of the biggest issues we see with NFL athletes is the people they surround themselves with and how they spend their money. And when you have a guy, give you an example of Dante Hightower, going back to his former city and hanging out with people he hung out with when he shouldn't be, he gets himself in trouble, right? Yeah, you get yourself in trouble. There has to be boundaries these athletes have, and I think the NFL is putting this up, saying, listen, this is not something that we're going to deal with. We'll wait until it comes out, and if you're guilty or innocent, but I think they're protecting themselves, and I think it's smart.
Right, and now Ian's saying supposedly there are emails. Yes, I've seen that. I've seen texts where he's gone after and everything, so it is fueling the fire, but it is still a little bit of he said, she said. There was not any kind of concrete evidence in that. It was basically just him kind of verbally going after her and assaulting her, calling her pretty much everything under the sun you could call her. I think he should be on the exempt list, and I don't think normally that this should warrant a guy not being able to play is because something has been accused, but this has been the precedent that when something comes up, you're not allowed to play. I don't think Antonio Brown should be the exception to the rule, even though I think the rule is dumb. If you're going to have a dumb rule, it's got to apply to everybody.
Why do you think it's a dumb rule?
Because, again, anyone could come out. Look at Reuben Foster.
Yeah.
He was accused twice. Both of them turned out to be false.
Well, yes.
He was never convicted by it.
I know. I still think that a lot of... And the thing is this. When you give someone power and they have money, they have more power. And I think you're seeing some of these athletes, and I'll be honest with you, knowing behind the scenes with the Reuben Foster situation, I'm going to say that there are things that are not that have not come out in public. But I think that some people are being paid. I'll just put it that way. But I think that the NFL has to do this, because if they don't, let's say, for example, they didn't set a precedent, and let's say I was involved in something, right? Mm-hmm. And they let me play, and they came back, and it's true, then I'm more of a liability for that institution, that program, than if I was on an exempt list.
I don't necessarily know if I believe that. Yes, there's a chance that you get sued, but at the end of the day, it's not your job to keep track of you. It's their job to make sure you're working. Now, if it's
a normal job, if there's a lawsuit, there's a normal job.
The NFL is the same way. No, they could suspend you, but that's because they're trying to distance themselves. That's more of a PR thing. You can't sue somebody's work. You couldn't sue Walmart because one of their employees did something dumb. And then they kept working at Walmart.
I know that's why I'm saying
it's the same thing with the NFL. The NFL were kind of doing that. Right.
It's a PR reason.
Exactly. I think PR plays a little bit into it too, but I think a lot of it too is they don't want to get sued. And I think when you look at the NFL, it's almost a decision out of fear. But you can't do that because just because somebody gets accused of something doesn't mean they did it.
Yeah.
Until something comes up and there's concrete evidence, I don't think anyone should be suspended. I think it's something where if they are convicted for it, then throw the book at them. But until that happens, I don't think you should.
And I'm going to say this too, this is kind of like on the same topic, but kind of off topic, is I think situations like this are just heartbreaking because you have women coming out, and I wish we could get to a point as a society where people are honest enough and have enough character and integrity to tell the truth, because it puts two different people in a position. It either puts the woman who was actually raped and actually assaulted in a position where she feels vulnerable and unheard, and people are calling her liars because of what other women have done. And on the same side, you have women who have lied, who have made up stuff, and who have blackmailed, affecting people's income and their livelihood if you're an athlete. So it's hard because we're at a place, and this is so common, and it's so sad it's so common, whether it's in college athletics or in major leagues, that we're having these conversations of sexual assault, harassment, and rape. None of those should ever be a topic of conversation. First off, women need to be respected, and secondly, women have a duty too to be honest. And if you were not actually raped and assaulted, then don't do this, because you're affecting women down the road who actually have been through this and are facing this. And so it's just a really hard situation. And it's just hard because you don't really know who's right. Like when you hear two people's stories, you're like, okay, maybe she's blackmailing him, but what if she's actually telling the truth, and what if he's actually hushing her? And it's just hard.
It absolutely is. Now Ian's kind of in that camp saying that she thinks she's blackmailing him, and part of the reason I think he might be right is because they're only asking for $75,000. Yeah. From what I understand, that sounds like a pretty small, hey, pay me and I'll go away kind of sum. Well,
wow.
If this was real, would $75,000 be the number? Is that what makes this right?
I don't
Or
think we know.
is it the point? I mean, it's not criminal charges yet, but
Yeah.
this is supposedly
This
just a
is
civil suit.
And that's a pretty big civil number.
Right. It is and it isn't. When you're
So-
talking about a guy with millions of dollars, I think you could go after a
think
lot larger sum than that.
I mean, part of me is like, well, maybe the fact that, because think of it. If she was going for $10 million, like how many people have sued Trump or sued someone, a bigger name, for much more money? Then yeah, you get hush money, right? You get the, like let's just ignore this, put it in the carpet, whatever. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here
This
and
to
say
me
she's
sounds
right
like
or wrong.
I'm not either, but it
because-
sounds to me when I heard that number that it's the hey, you can make this go away
know.
for just a little bit of money. I mean, that's not even a game
the thing
check.
About the things about this stuff is, and this is coming from a daughter. I'm a daughter of a legal investigator who used to be a policeman, and things go behind the scenes with lawsuits that people don't know about. So. There's settlement phases with both parties way before something like this comes
Right.
public. So Antonio Brown's not shocked this happened. He can pretend he is. He can pretend like, oh my word, I had no idea. He knew. He was contacted. He was subpoenaed. He has lawyers. They tried to meet a settlement, and it did not happen. What I don't really know about the whole money, but we'll see.
More than likely that happened. He was contacted before that, but this might also be a good opportunity for the shock factor because again, if all she has to do is come out and press the charges against him, you put him in a bad position. You put him in a position where now he's got to react to it. You've already had all this drama with Oakland. You're in a position where you're with a new team and you're trying to kind of endear yourself to the Patriots. I think Antonio Brown's in a bad spot now. Should the Patriots bench him? I think probably yes. Will the Patriots bench him? I think probably no. I think the Patriots, as long as he's available to play, aren't going to have any qualms about this. He's going to be out there on Sunday. At the very least, I expect Roger Goodell will probably put him on the exempt list, but I guess we'll get to see.
Yep.
Now, Ian's saying, as a Steelers fan, he believes this came out because he went to the Patriots. There's a chance to it, but this could have been any team. I mean, when we talk about how much he's been in the news, there is the chance that she is making some or all of this up, or changing her story or whatever because he's a vulnerable target, or there's a chance he did it. I mean, would you be shocked if Antonio Brown did it?
But I'm going to say this. Whether or not he's guilty or innocent, this does not this does not negate what I'm saying. He has a personal responsibility to change the way people think about him, just like Johnny Manziel. Johnny Manziel has a responsibility to show that it's one thing to say, I'm a changed man. It's one thing to say that and still make the same mistakes. It's another thing to actually prove you're a changed man based on your actions. If I'm Antonio Brown, and let's say I'm innocent, I'm truly innocent, none of this happened, I'm going to show the world that I'm a different person. Because the last month I have been on national news, all over the news, for negative things. Whether it's drama, whether it's saying forget you, whether it's saying, this situation. Like, I want to clear my name of all negativity and drama if I'm Antonio Brown.
Now, there's a chance of that, but there's a good chance his lawyers are like, hey, don't say anything. Don't respond to this because you're only going to dig your hole deeper.
No, I mean after this is all settled.
Right. Well, sure.
Like, he has an obligation. And that's what I think is so frustrating about these athletes, some of them, is it's frustrating because it's like looking at, like, Johnny Manziel has so much God-given talent as a quarterback, as an athlete, right? He's just naturally gifted. You look at someone like that who makes mistakes.
We could argue the fundamentals aren't there, but
for the argument,
for the sake of argument,
you look at someone, you just want to shake them. Like, why would you make some of these stupid decisions? You're so talented. You made it to Cleveland. Yeah, it wasn't the ideal place. Yeah, like whatever. But you made off the field, and it's not even on the field. If it was on the field issues, I wouldn't have as big a problem. It's the fact they can't separate their work life and their personal life. Like, they can't realize that their personal life decisions are going to affect their on the field playing time. And on the field, when you're an athlete, you're not representing yourself, you're representing an organization, and these guys don't understand that. They think it's only going to affect me. No, it's going to affect your entire team because now there's this backlight and this negative light on their team. Anyway, I get fired up about this stuff.
No, that's okay. That's absolutely okay.
I get fired up with college athletes making
I'm definitely with you, but if there's a team that can kind of bounce off of this, it's the Patriots. Yeah, because they're all business. You could argue they are the Alabama of the NFL, where it doesn't matter. It's all business. And if Antonio Brown's not their guy, they'll move on. Now, it might be a little worse with them trading Demaryius Thomas, but somehow I think we're still going to see Antonio Brown suit up until Roger Goodell tells him, there's no way he's allowed to play. We'll move forward, though. Let's talk about the NCAA and this new California law, which allows players to go out and seek sponsorship for their image. That means they can be in commercials. They can find ways to make money off the field. And the NCAA fired back at them saying, please reconsider this, guys. They even came back and said we see this as unconstitutional and everything. It's like,
well,
the NCAA, is this like the worst organization in football? No, I'm sorry, second. FIFA is worse than the NCAA, but only by a little bit.
Yes and no. I mean, this all started, I mean, we can talk about people in history who have really made a name, but I'm going to use Johnny Manziel again because the Aggies were using Johnny football in the back of their uniforms. He was getting paid for them. It became a huge controversy, a huge topic of conversation. Should athletes get paid to play? Now, I can see both sides, right? You see both sides on being paid. I would love to know. Please put in the comments what you think. But there are a few things you need to know. One of them, I'm going to read a part of quote that has been released from this. It says, if the bill becomes law, in California's 58 NCAA schools are compelled to allow an unrestricted name, image, and likeness scheme, it would erase the critical distinction between college and professional athletes. And because it gives those schools an unfair recruiting advantage, it would result in them eventually being unable to compete at NCAA competition. So if you're a school like USC, Stanford, you would be unable to compete in NCAA national championships. And some of that, and I'll be honest, there are some sports like swimming, mainly that's one that they're competing for not only a professional, but Olympic. And that's going to put that would put a negative light on them if they can compete in a competition. Now, I'll say this. I can see both sides. Yeah, I mean, you're getting paid to play, but it kind of, do you think after this many years of having NCAA sports, and now all of a sudden, forget the Michael Jordans, forget the Brett Favres, forget the Russell Wilsons, forget all these Tom Brady's, whoever, LeBron James, didn't play in college, but in high school. Do you think they should have been paid to play? Now we're looking at this conversation saying, yeah, like athletes obviously should, if my name's on the bike uniform, I should get paid to play. Should you or should you not? And secondly, the only thing I'm going to say is people don't realize that this is going to bring up such a big thing that we're not thinking about, and that's going to be Title IX. Because if you have women's rowing, women's basketball, women's rugby, whatever your Division I programs may be, the thing's this. Yes, athletes can be paid to play, but it's going to bring in a huge controversy.
Hey, James, how you doing?
How much they get paid. Is it going to be the same as women? Well, then women are going to be like, well, we should get paid as much. And then it's going to be like, well, maybe it's per capita of how many people come to games. So it's it's a great idea. I think it's going to be poor execution.
Well, let me say this. I think this absolutely needs to happen. Look, I'm not a big supporter of a lot of what California as a state does legislatively, but I think this is a good move. I really do. Everyone's saying, yes, it's going to upset the balance in college football. Well, part of that's on you. Right now, there's an imbalance in the NFL where people who play in Texas, in Florida, in Tennessee don't have to pay a state income tax. Mm-hmm. Does that give them an advantage? Maybe. There are definitely socioeconomic factors that go into where athletes decide that they want to play. I will say this, though. As far as Title IX goes, I don't think it's going to affect it too much. I think you're going to be able to go out as a football player and say, I'm making this money on the side for me. I have the right to my own image. Yeah. I think it's corrupt for the NCAA to say you don't have the right to make money outside of playing football where we're not going to pay you. I think this is incredibly corrupt. I think this is one of those moves that it's the right move. This is absolutely the right move. So, Ian, I didn't mean to knock your state, man, but they made the right move here. Let me say that. I'm not crazy about the banning plastic straw things, but I am crazy about them saying
Alabama's done that too.
Still not crazy about it.
There's nothing worse than drinking a cup of coffee or anything that like the straw starts deteriorating in my mouth. Like I just want to throw that cup out the window.
Absolutely.
But then I'm littering. I can't do that.
James, it has been a hot one, man. We're glad you could join us.
Ian agrees with me. But I'll say this one thing.
Go ahead.
I'm not opposed. Now, for example,
I'm going to reload while you do this.
No, you're good. I don't think athletes should be paid to play. I don't think that, because you look at most of these athletes are getting a monthly stipend. People don't realize that. As a college athlete, I was given a monthly stipend to live on, right? Now,
still not cool with it. Let me tell you. Let me counter the stipend argument here because I can already tell where this is going. Even though they're being paid a stipend, you are not freely negotiating that. The NCAA says, "Here, take your pittance, and you get this."
But what I'm saying is that stipend is way more than livable. Like. It's spending money.
It's not about what's fair. It's not about what's fair. I understand, but it's not about what's fair.
It's about college. It brought up the whole Title IX argument because then they realized at Alabama, like, oh crap, the football team's getting more money in a stipend than the women's softball team, and then that brought up a huge controversy because all of a sudden women were getting paid as much as men, but honestly, they were still full time. We were still working the same amount of hours, whatever it may be. Yeah, women's softball is not bringing as much money in as Alabama football. No joke. One stadium holds hundreds. One stadium holds hundreds of thousands. So honestly, it's not going to bring.
Right.
But when you look at the fact that women's softball is bringing more money than men's baseball, but yet baseball is getting more money, then it brings in this whole controversy. So the reason I say you shouldn't pay to play is because that's hard to regulate. I don't have an opposition to them paying for the likeness or a name. Now, if Tua Tagovailoa's name is on the back of a uniform, then yeah, if they're making money off his name, then he should get paid for it. But it doesn't mean that every athlete, whether you're first string or fifth string, should get paid. It's just going to bring up a whole can of worms.
Well, I think they absolutely should, and this is a can of worms that we've now got to go through. I think that states need to give these players the ability to use their own likenesses. And this has nothing to do with the school. This is not you going through the school to get advertising. This is you going to your local car dealership and saying, I'm Tua Tagovailoa. I should be able to be in commercials for you and make some money on the side using my likeness that has nothing to do with the school. Right now, the NCAA takes that advantage away from people, and that is the most un-American thing humanly possible.
Well,
I understand the stipend argument, but that's not negotiated rate. That's not something you can go in there and say, I want more of a stipend. Well, they should. They absolutely should. And I guarantee you, all the people in these big conferences, if you're on the Alabama football team, if you're at Clemson right now, you care, because we're not talking about hundreds of dollars here. We're talking about hundreds of thousands you could be making being in commercials and everything else.
The point is that historically, and I don't think that we should be paying college athletes to play. I don't. Because it brings up an argument on it changes everything. It does. Because when you give someone
change can be good.
No.
Change can be good.
No.
Sorry. Go ahead.
What I'm saying is when you start paying college athletes, when you start paying women's basketball, women's softball, women's rugby, men's baseball, men's basketball, men's football, it's not really a college sport. It's a NFL, NBA 0.2. And you're going to have guys, it's going to bring up recruiting. It's going to have to bring up recruiting changes. They're going to have to open up a free agency, because then it's going to be barging with money. So
they almost already have with the transfer portal, right? Now all of a sudden guys are going to have
there's legalities behind that. But what I'm saying is it's all going to be money. You're going to lose the beauty behind actually going. Tell me that let me just think of, whoever, played college football under Bear Bryant, right? Made it to the NFL, got millions of dollars, retired happily. He would tell you straight up, and I've interviewed Amari Cooper and Derrick Henry asking the same question. Do you think you should have been paid to play in college? They said no, because
I don't know. Derrick Henry might have been paid to play in college. We don't know, and I'm not accusing Derrick Henry specifically, but the big programs we've already seen.
You're getting an education.
How many of them are there for the education? Even if you stick around to get the degree. Who's putting that degree to use? I've got a degree, and let me tell you, it's not doing me a whole lot of good. I get to hang out with you guys all the time, right? Obviously, I'm not doing so great. Let me go to a couple of these comments before we go on. I don't think the whole argument of we're giving you an education is fair, because most of these guys are playing in college, especially football, because they need to do that to go to the pros. Same thing with basketball. They're being forced to go to these schools and not be paid for their labor, and I'm not cool with that. I'm not. I think, again, regardless of what this does for recruiting, regardless of what this does for everything else, the NCAA should have to adjust and should have to pay these players who are putting themselves at risk going out there of serious injury in every sport. Even beyond them,
and I agree to disagree.
Even in those sports that, like basketball, where you're not in as much of physical danger, you're still putting wear and tear on your body. You're still putting out your labor, making these schools millions and millions of dollars.
Then we're gonna start paying them in high school, because they should.
Hold on.
We'll start paying you in Pee Wee. We'll pay you $1,000 to play.
No. I'm not saying it's I'm not saying it's the school's job to pay them. I'm saying the school should not be able to take away their right to make money on the side. And that's what they do right now. They say you are not allowed to use your own image because you're on this football team. That's not okay. You don't get to take away somebody's right to use their own image for whatever they want to do. That would be like you working for your job and saying, I want to drive for Uber on the side because I need to make a little bit of money, and your job saying, no, you don't have the right to make any money. Now let's double that down and them say, we're not going to pay you. You're an intern, but you're not allowed going off to make any money on your own. That's not okay. I don't care if they're like, well, they're getting an education. I don't care if they're saying anything else.
You're not thinking legality. You're thinking passionately, which I understand.
No, I am thinking legality. No, legally, you should not be able to deprive somebody the right to make their own money.
Well, I understand that. I'm not disagreeing that, but you're not listening. What I'm saying is if you open up the window, fine. Tua Tagovailoa gets to pay his brand, right? He gets paid to use his brand.
Sure.
The Title IX will counteract anything he gets, because if Jackie Trina
only if the school's involved. Only if the school is involved. If the school is not involved, Title IX should have nothing to do with it, because that's money that's outside the school. This is Tua Tagovailoa saying, "Hey, I've now become a public I've now become a public figure. I'm allowed to make money on the side." That would be Title IX has everything to do with how the school allocates funds. These funds are not touched by the school. Period. Title IX should have nothing to do with this. This should be 100% outside of Title IX, because this is people setting up their own deals. This isn't Alabama saying, "Oh, Tua, hey, don't worry, we're going to set you up this week. We're going to get you all kinds of sponsorships." Even though that will happen under this, that is not what this is about. This is about Tua being able to go make his own money, or anyone. This is about the guy at Temple who can go sell local ads for a local car dealership in the area because there's Temple fans who want to see him on those ads. This is about everybody. This isn't just about the big schools. And for everyone saying California's going to have an unfair advantage, at first, yes, the rest of the nation needs to react. They're doing the right thing here by saying this is going to happen. I hope they sign it. I do. There's nothing unconstitutional about this. This is about not holding student athletes who are adults. They're old enough to join the Army, go overseas, and get shot at. I do. Sorry. They're old enough to get shot at. They're old enough to go make their own money and make their own decisions. That's all I can say. Moving forward here, I do want to go through a few of these because we did have some good ones. James says it's the right choice where they want to play. Shoot, as long as they get playing time, I agree with you. It's all their choice. If you want to go get paid, a lot of players are going to flock to the California schools, and that's okay. To me, it is. I know Hannah's kind of in the other camp here.
I'm just telling you from being an athlete, it's fine. I will refrain from commenting.
No, you feel free.
Well,
you don't have to
saying,
agree with me. You're allowed to disagree.
I don't, because, I mean, what I'm saying, it's going to ruin the game. It's going to ruin the beauty of the game because where you're going to get it, you're going to get hot-headed athletes. You're going to get big names to go, like LeBron James' son, who can't play basketball worth a flip, is going to go to UCLA and be the name because his dad is a famous basketball player.
Only if UCLA wants to fall on that sword.
What I'm saying is it's going to be an unfair advantage, not only for recruiting, but you're going to get these guys that are going to be paying to play. What's going to happen in the game of college football? We're going to lose that. We're going to lose, and if this is going to trickle into basketball, we're going to lose college basketball.
No, it's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. There's so much money in it right now. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with these students being able to do it.
The universities will then lose money because think about this: if one of the biggest sponsors of Alabama sports is Tuscaloosa Toyota. It's one of the biggest sponsors of Alabama athletics. If they then get to say, you know what, forget working directly with the university, I'm going to work with athletes and pay them directly, then guess who's losing out of hundreds of millions of dollars is if they can pay Tua Tagovailoa $100,000 a month to be the face of all their commercials and do all this stuff, then that's money the university's not allocating.
Good. This is free market economics 101.
That scholarship that someone's not going to get.
Okay, that's free markets 101.
So I'm just saying,
you need to get competitive if you're a school.
You don't get paid to play because they're going to have to find their own. Then eventually we're going to look into.
Let me go economics here because what you're talking about is called crony capitalism, where all of a sudden you have these made men who are the only people allowed to make money in a system, and that's not okay. Where the system thrives is where you open it up and let everybody make money.
Cool.
Sure, so the school might lose sponsorships because they're not competitive, and other sponsors can say, I'd rather have just Tua instead of paying Alabama $1 million. Maybe I pay Tua $100,000, and it helps my business out. Competition is good. It will force these schools to change and to make adjustments to step up. And when things get competitive is where where people thrive. Schools don't get to say, well, we can be the only game in town and you need to work for me for free, especially in football where you're literally putting your life on the line, where you could go take a wrong shot, snap your neck, and die. I 100% am all for these guys being able to make use of their own image. Again, as far as Title IX goes.
I don't have any sympathy for these guys because think about it this way. Compared to 10 years ago, NFL athletes are getting paid more. They get more exposure. They're getting more opportunities to be entrepreneurs.
Sure.
And in NFL, I don't have any sympathy for a guy who's playing right now at Alabama who's like, man, I should be getting paid to play, knowing that he's going to be like Calvin Ridley. Let's use an example. It's Calvin Ridley. We don't use Tua Tagovailoa. Calvin Ridley, great wide receiver, was not really the face of Alabama because he was overshined by the quarterback every single year, right? He was the number one all-time leading receiver at Alabama, one of the best in the SEC history, but still overshined by who was quarterback, right? Every single year we talk about the quarterback. Let's say Calvin Ridley was like, man, I should be getting paid to play. When you think, but it's no different than 10 years prior to that, someone else being in the situation saying, well, all of a sudden now, after all these years of that, we're going to start paying these athletes. I mean, the other guys had to put in as much work. Football was way more dangerous then in college football than it is now because now we're basically playing flag football or two-hand touch. And they're getting paid more in the NFL. So, yeah, I mean, maybe the way they're using the names and stuff, yeah, I understand that, getting royalty for that. I'm not disagreeing with that. But what you're saying and what you're allegating is going to be a huge puddle of issues that players are going to be paid to literally play on the field. Universities are not going to have as many
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. It's all about the school.
I know, but it's all going to affect that. That's what.
Sure, it's going to affect that, but schools need to adjust. If they're going to act like a business and want to reap all the profits, they need to adjust. The other thing I will say, you're saying it wouldn't be fair to guys who didn't get paid in the past. So should the NFL go back and pay all these guys in the 70s and 80s? Well, it's the same argument. They didn't get paid the millions of dollars these guys are being paid.
You're saying these guys are on the line. Yeah, but I mean, they made a decision.
Well, you're
it's
talking
not like
about
we're going to the
Army. You're talking about guys that are at Alabama and they're probably going to the NFL because they know that. What about the kid at South Carolina who isn't?
I'm saying, but he's no different than previously when those same guys in those same positions were put. Like, we didn't have this topic here and go, well, poor Johnny boy, he broke his leg, should have been paid to play. No, he played.
Two wrongs don't make a right. That's all I can say. Two wrongs don't make a right because guys didn't get paid in the past is not a good argument for you shouldn't pay them now.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, we've screwed them in the past, but that doesn't mean we should keep screwing people over. No. We can move on and talk about college football here.
No, because it's not screwing people over.
It is. It is 100%. You're asking them to go out there and put themselves online.
I'm not asking them. They're doing it. If you're a 5-year-old,
that's what the schools are asking.
You're a 5-year-old.
That's what the schools are 100% asking them to do. Go ahead, though. No, finish your thought. If you're 5 years old and you're in Pee Wee.
I'm saying, like, these kids love to play football.
Take it easy on the bar, though.
It's just like Olympic athletes. Let me tell you this mind-blowing statistic. You know, women's hockey does not get paid a lickety-split. Not a single one of them get paid to play U.S. hockey, but all the men do, right? We're not having this topic of, oh, well, these women. You know how many women got hurt at the last Olympics? They won the gold medal. You know how many of them had broken bones and concussions after the games? No one talked about this because no one wants to bring this topic, but Kendall Schofield.
But that's also an image, that's also part of publicity. And let me say this. Nobody's selling them, hey, you play women's hockey, but you're not allowed to go out there and get sponsorship. You're not allowed to go out there and be in commercials. You're not allowed to use your own image.
What?
They're not telling them that.
Yes, they are.
No, they're not. Well, they shouldn't be. And if they are, I'm not 100% on women's hockey.
This is why women's soccer is such a passionate topic because when Mia Hamm and Brandi Chastain and Julie Foudy won the World Cup, do you know why they sued USA? Do you know why USA sued them? Because the USA was pissed off with the girls because they weren't getting paid a tenth of what the men were getting paid, but they were playing more games. So you know what they did? Those girls created their own indoor soccer tournament that they still play to the day. USA sued them because they said, you're not allowed to make money outside of our reign. You're not allowed to make this money. Guess what happened?
And that's wrong.
Well, I know.
Not
that's
done yet. Exactly
Still
what the college is saying.
So what I'm saying is, we're talking about women, and these women they're representing our country. They're out there. They're playing the game they love. They try to make an opportunity to make more money, and it causes huge thing. We're still seeing the effects of it. Now, I'm not against. I'm against your argument that these guys should deserve to. No, I don't think anyone deserves anything. Everything's a gift. But what I'm saying is.
They're working for it. They have the right to go monetize on their own image.
When you go to college, we're gonna have to move on from this. I'm getting too passionate, and this is dumb because you're not listening to what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say
I get what you're saying, but I disagree with it fundamentally. It's not they're entitled to it. I'm not saying every guy deserves to get paid $100,000 to play in college football. No, I'm saying they have the right to go out and make money for themselves on the side, and that's what this is about. This isn't USC paying them. And Ian kind of made that comment when he said that a guy would ask to be released from UCLA so he can be paid by USC because they might offer more. This isn't about the schools giving them money.
But
this is about him being able to utilize his own persona and utilize his own brand to go out and make money doing other things on the side. Nobody should have the right to tell anybody that, hey, you can't go do something outside of me. And I'm 100% with you on the women's soccer thing. You're kind of making my own point for me here, where
but what I'm saying
it's not right for any organization to say you don't have the right to do something else.
That. So men's hockey can use their names. They can be on commercials. They get paid. Women's hockey, they're in those commercials, but guess what? They don't get a single dime.
Then let's change it for women's hockey, too. And I'm all for that.
But what I'm saying is, this is going to bring up an issue with women in sports and women in this industry. Okay, well, for example, give up a name, Lisa Leslie or Candace Parker playing basketball in Tennessee. How many times was she used? She was the face. Pat Summitt, actually, was the face of women's basketball. They used her in every single commercial. She didn't get a dime. Why?
Well, I bet you Pat Summitt probably did because she wasn't a player. Are you talking about player or are you talking about coach? Because if she's the coach, I guarantee you she got paid.
No, she was not able to get paid per commercial. That's part of the NCAA basketball.
Well, that might be a negotiating thing, too. That might be you negotiating your contract where you say, hey, the school can pay me this and use my rights in there.
I'm more passionate about the purity of the sport, and if this is going to go down this way, then it's going to, honestly, whether or not you see it or you agree, it's going to ruin the way that we play college football. It's absolutely going to ruin that.
I think it'll lead to changes. I don't disagree with that, but I think at the end of the day, you don't have the right to deprive somebody to make a living, and that's exactly what they're doing here. I know they give them a stipend. I know they get quote-unquote free education that most of them aren't planning on using because a lot of student athletes just want to get to the next level, and we've seen pro leagues say that you need to. I think, again, you have to look at what these guys are able to do, and you can't tell them that you don't have the right to make money.
You're seeing more and more of them getting their education because you're seeing more and more of them getting injured in
They're
NFL.
already getting paid anyway. Look at college basketball. They're already getting paid.
Well, let's look at the statistics. And I'll say this. This is why I think NFL is slowly deteriorating, is the time to play. How many years do you look at, not even an offensive lineman, a running back, quarterback, making it, living in the NFL, because they're so much more injury prone than they used to be. You know why? Do you know why that's the case? People don't know this. Do you know why?
Well, there's a lot of issues. It's not one single issue. One of the biggest ones is they're not practicing the way they used to. With the NFLPA, where they're not practicing in pads, that's a huge part of it. I also think a lot of it's the game's getting much more technical. You're getting better athletes out there hitting each other.
They're not paying physical therapists that they used to. They used to have in-team personal trainers, physical therapists at the games, on the field, doing stretches, doing a lot of mobility work. They don't fund that anymore. So you're having guys who are playing 1, 2, 3 games getting hurt. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games getting hurt. Out for the season.
And if I wanted to recruit, what would be the first thing I would do? If I'm USC and now they let the dogs loose in California and I can pay everybody.
I'm not talking about college. I'm talking about NFL.
Or anyone. Okay, even in the NFL. Even in the NFL. If I'm Oakland and I want to bring in free agents and I know my team's not that great, so I need some way to convince people, guess what I would have? A lot of trainers on the sideline say, man, we're going to take care of you. We're going to have the best health care. You don't want to be the San Francisco 49ers who had an issue with that in the past where guys like Patrick Willis retired prematurely because of that. Right, it is definitely an issue. But, again, it's not the defining factor, I don't think, here. Again, yes, schools might cut corners to try to get competitive or to try to save money, but you can use that as a recruiting tactic to say, hey, we do this better than other teams, so this is why you should come play for me.
Yeah, read their comments. We need to get through the games.
We can go to the games here.
I can't see them.
Ian was saying they won't flock to play football at Cal State Bakersfield. Only so many spots open in the top-tier schools. Well, they won't flock to them, but they're not flocking to them right now, right? Nobody's flocking to play at Cal. You play at Cal because I couldn't make it at USC.
That's just because of exposure.
And that won't change. NFL. I mean, the big programs will continue to get all the talent. Alabama's second team right now could probably go out and beat mid-tier schools in college football. That's just the way it is.
If you're talking about getting paid to play and the opportunity for them and their exposure and their brand, then you're going to have more people flock to that. It's an irrelevant argument right now because...
Well, that might help Cal out. I totally agree.
I mean, Baker Mayfield would have been a great example in Oklahoma for using his image to get paid to play. And... if he knew that if he went to Oklahoma or if he could go to USC, both make the NFL, and both opportunities to make the NFL but get paid in college, he would have easily gone to USC, UCLA. 100%.
Absolutely. Will wants to know, how about the Patriots cheating yet again to get Antonio Brown? I know, Will, you're all in on this. We did talk Antonio Brown at the beginning of the show. We think he should be on the commissioner's exempt list. I think we kind of agree on that one. We don't agree on a lot in this whole California law, and that's okay.
Well, it's just because as an athlete who saw a lot behind the scenes and saw that, I mean...
As an athlete, if someone came to you and said, hey, we want to give you $500 to go be in one of our commercials, would that have been a bad thing for you in your life?
No, but...
Then why should the school be able to tell you you're not allowed to do that?
I'm not saying that. You've missed the entire point of my argument. My entire point of the argument is not that I'm against it. It's that I'm very much a let's don't get the cart before the horse. This is a great idea. I've never said I was opposed to it. I don't think there's enough logic right now into actually making this law because California's one. They always get the cart before the horse. They always make a law and like, crap. Well, that was dumb. We shouldn't have done that. California has
they don't
not
say
really.
That. Yeah.
Well, California's
just
not.
Let the state keep going downhill.
California's not made enough logical decisions. Okay, how do we counteract every single thing we're going to encounter? Mm-hmm. How do we make this fair for women? How do we make it fair for college basketball versus this? How do we open it up for the NCAA? And that's what I'm saying is. This is becoming an issue within the NCAA. Not so much, listen, I think Tua Tagovailoa should get paid to have his name on jersey. I do, because he's representing the university. Do I think that The only thing I'm concerned about is the purity of the sport when it starts opening up to every single athlete, every single sport. Then it's really not college. It's really not a college game. It's a mini professional league. That's what I'm trying to say.
Ian wants to know, why is California always so decisive to people outside of Cali? Look, let me say this, Ian. It's because y'all are crazy. And you know it. You got that whole, whatever, the West Coast vibe that just drives people nuts. I have nothing against California as a state.
Well,
I think I'm not always crazy about the decisions they make. I have been,
I love it.
It's nice to be out. It's nice to visit. Not sure I want to stay. As far as this goes, as final thoughts on this topic, and then we'll move into the games that you need to look forward to this week in college football.
Okay.
Good thing there's not too many because I went too long on this. At the very least, I think, again, as far as the horse coming before the cart, this has been a long time coming in college sports. I'm not for anyone saying that you don't have the right to make a living, especially using your own image. I'm not saying the schools need to pay people. This doesn't need to be how much can USC pay me versus Alabama versus Texas versus whoever. What this does need to turn into is, hey, I have some popularity. Maybe I go to Temple and I'm not in the biggest school, but there's a local car dealer who wants to throw me some money, and the odds are I never make it to the NFL, but I can capitalize on what I'm doing and what I'm putting at risk to play for a school like Temple. They don't have the right to tell me I don't have the right to make a living. Nathan, glad to see you, man. He says he loves it out there in Cali. I'm glad you do, man. I like I said, fun place to visit, man. I had a great time when I was out there. Not saying I don't want to stay, but I think California's right here. I think this is the right move, and I think they're the first state to actually step up to the plate and say, we're going to take on this issue. I give them props for that. Now, Scott's saying they should put a limit on payments so there is no bidding war. Make payments depending on family income at home. Again, I don't necessarily think this is... I think people are getting a little confused here. This isn't about the school sending money to their athletes. This is about athletes being able to take what they can do and go out to other businesses and say, hey, what can I do that would help you sell cars? What can I do that would help you, in whatever kind of way of life? This is about them making money on the side, using their image and using their likeness for things. This isn't necessarily about schools paying players out front and the highest bidder wins players. This isn't about that. This is about guys being able to make money off the field in commercials like you see in the NFL. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about these NCAA games. Yeah. Because we got a few of them this week you should be paying attention to.
Well, let's recap week 2.
Let's recap week 2. Go ahead.
Okay, so one of the ones we both agree on was LSU at Texas. LSU, of course, came out, the whole air conditioning scenario. Don't really know if that's true, false. Heard both stories and that, but honestly would not be surprised if it was true.
If you haven't heard, Texas was accused of shutting off the air conditioning in the away locker room before the game, and it was like 91, 93. I think it was like 98.
Too. It was 106 in the field, 98 in the locker room.
Yeah, and they shut off the air conditioning, supposedly. LSU had been tipped off by Louisiana Tech saying, hey, this is going to be an issue, so they brought in like fans and everything like that. But if this is true, I think Texas needs to be excluded for 2 years from the NCAA, from any kind of bowl game. I think they should be. For them, so. They should get the kiss of death for this one. Basically, this is pretty terrible. We're talking about 18, 19, 20-year-old athletes in a locker room that's 100 degrees, and then having to go on the field and play in 107 degrees. Absolutely unacceptable. This is gamesmanship. This is way beyond gamesmanship. This is just terrible.
Another game, Michigan, Army. Definitely thought Michigan was going to win this game.
How you doing, Jordan? Good to see you, man.
Honestly, I think Army deserved to win that one, even though Michigan did win it.
God.
I mean, there was just a lot of bad officiating, but I think Army should have won that.
Let me say this. How dumb do I look picking Michigan to win the Big Ten? Right now, not looking great. But they hung on. They survived. They're now 2-0.
Well,
they didn't blow out MTSU, my alma mater.
Yep.
They didn't blow them out. MTSU hung around with them for most of the first half. Michigan looks pretty rough. If the other Harbaugh, whose name Jim Harbaugh, is going to keep his job. I was drawing a blank there.
Like, what?
If Jim Harbaugh can keep his job, he has to step up to the plate here in the next few weeks because things are eventually going to get tougher. You don't get to play MTSU every week. MTSU's not a pushover, but they're not exactly a powerhouse either.
I'll give you one that I was impressed with, that being Maryland over Syracuse. Syracuse at the time was ranked. Maryland unranked, winning 63-20. Maryland's going to be a team to watch out for. I mean, they've done a lot of fantastic things with their program, of course. I have former Alabama coaches there at Maryland. Jalen Hurts at the time was thinking about becoming the quarterback there, obviously at Oklahoma now. But that's going to be a really big team to watch out for, Maryland, what they're going to be able to do. Some other games we talked about. Utah, of course, performing well. But Texas A&M and Clemson, that was a game that you and I both thought Clemson would win, which they did. But I think it was a much better game than people thought. And I think Texas A&M is still a team in the SEC you have to watch out for. But there's definitely some inconsistencies. And I'd say Clemson may not be as dominant 100% as we think they are.
They are. I think we're kind of underestimating Texas A&M. I'll disagree a little bit here. I think Clemson's great, but I think we're underestimating how much of an effect Jimbo Fisher has in a program. Yeah. With him going to A&M next year, the year after, they're going to be great. I know. I get what you're saying, but I think Clemson's really good. I think they just had good competition. Yeah. Last year, we saw A&M kind of push Alabama a little bit too. I think a lot of it goes down to Jimbo Fisher's an amazing coach who's getting something out of, I don't want to say blood from stone. They still have good players. But he's definitely maximizing what this program can do. I can't wait to see them next 2-3 years. Watch out for A&M.
And then, of course, 2 more games from last week. Cal beating Washington. Pretty big shocker here, considering it was at Washington and Cal winning 2019. Then last but not least, Pac-12 matchup. I actually picked this one right. I was kind of happy. I thought USC would beat Stanford. I did not think it would be by 25-plus points.
I was in on Stanford. I thought that Stanford was going to blow everyone out.
45-20. I was pretty impressed.
Absolutely.
I mean, but this USC team, and this has been a consistent theme. Either they've struggled really hard in the beginning of the season and done well towards middle end, or they've done really well in the beginning and struggled in the middle. Let's just say if they can be consistent. But right now, I mean, USC is looking to be a team to beat this year. So.
And Ian definitely called the USC pick. I'll give you credit, Ian. It's one of those games that I wasn't expecting. I thought Stanford was going to seal the deal in the Pac-12 and be the team to beat. Yep. But with them dropping off, they still have an important game here coming up against UCF this week. We'll move on. Let's talk about this week.
Yeah, talk about these games.
The first one I'm going to tell you to watch is Maryland. Number 21, they're the most explosive offense in college football right now, but they're going up against Temple. We're seeing that line creep back closer to even. I think it's at 9 right now. Even though the Terps have been able to score left and right center on just about everybody in the NCAA, this is an offense that, again, might have a tougher test up against Temple, who can score themselves. In this one, I want to see if the Terps are for real.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a big matchup. I'm excited for this one. I'll give you another one. Washington State and Houston. That's going to be a big game. I think Houston's a team that can actually cause some damage, but Washington State right now, 20th right now in the country, a good team contending in the Pac-12. So they're going to be able to do this. It's going to be a big matchup for Washington State this early on in the season.
Definitely could. I think Houston's going to rebound after they got to play their money game. I know they lost to Oklahoma in the first week, but they weren't absolutely terrible, even though they let Jalen Hurts kind of do whatever he wanted against them. This is going to be a tough game. I think Washington State is going to have their hands full in this one. I'm going to pick them to win, but I think Houston's going to challenge them here. Yeah. The best game of the week. For me, watch for Iowa versus Iowa State.
Okay.
These are two teams that essentially should both be ranked. Iowa's ranked number 19. Iowa State at 1-0 is just outside the top 25 in the AP poll. These are two teams that should be ranked. They have great quarterbacks in Nate Stanley and Brock Purdy, and they both have good defenses. I think NFL-wise, if you love the NFL, watch these two quarterbacks because there's a chance that one of these guys turns into a 4th, 5th, 6th round pick that could be the next. I'm not going to say this could be the next great quarterback, but he could have an impact. He could be a Gardner Minshew. He could be a Nate Stidham. He could be one of these guys that nobody talks about when they're drafted, but you're going to have the inside drop on. I like both of these guys.
All right, moving on, a couple of more. Let's talk about Ohio State, Indiana. Of course, we talked about Ohio State, Cincinnati. Cincinnati, of course, didn't do as well as we thought they would. But Indiana's always that team that you kind of look at like, they may could do some damage. On the road, hosting Ohio State could be good. I mean, right now, Indiana's 2-0, beating Ball State and Eastern Illinois. But I'm excited for this. I mean, I'm excited to see what this Indiana team can do. The last time they played, they did lose to Ohio State 49-21, but it's still going to be a tough game. I think Ohio State's coming in this game a little iffy, but I think this is going to be a game where they're going to have to work out some kinks for regular season play.
Let me go to the comments here really quick, but before I do that, I'm not worried about Indiana. People were talking up the Cincinnati game. Ohio State blew them out of the water, kind of like I expected. I think this will be similar. I think it'll probably be about 40-20, kind of like last year. I think Ohio State's going to be good. Cody wants to know, says Washington State is weak, no offensive line and no defense. They definitely haven't looked great, but I still think I'm still going to put them over Houston, who good team. Maybe not quite good enough to keep with Washington State.
I mean, if Houston had a really good defense, they could have honestly beaten.
Good defense or not, they take the ball away. Maybe a couple interceptions
if you would have had a legitimate defense, we would have been talking about a completely different game against Oklahoma.
Houston's had 19 straight games with a takeaway. I'd like to see them get a couple in this game if they're going to beat a team like Washington State, who should be better. Cody, look for this one to maybe solve a little bit of issues on the offensive line. We'll see. Also, Jordan wants to know, what do you think about Michigan State's performance last week against Western Michigan?
I mean,
It's good, but I'll also say this: it's Western Michigan. Don't oversell when you win a money game. A lot of guys in college football love it when you go beat somebody up. Look, Sparty's got to get a big win before I'm ready to say they're back.
Well, I mean, and Arizona State's really not that team. I'm not really sure until, some people may sort of Northwestern is going to be a big matchup for them. I wouldn't say they're going to have the big matchup until they play Ohio State, because then once they get to Ohio State, beginning of October, they go straight from Ohio State, Wisconsin, Penn State, Illinois, and Michigan, all within 5 games. So that's going to be really the crutch of their schedule.
Yeah.
If they can win 3 out of 5 games, then I'll call that a successful time for Michigan State.
Also, Ian saying Chip Kelly's proving the Ducks gig is a fluke. It could be, but again, I'm all for you give the guy 3 to 4 years to recruit all his players, and you get to. I want to see guys like Chip Kelly, who's only been there for a couple of years now. You don't want to judge him too much when he's not playing with his players. I want to see what the guys he recruits for the first year or two, what they look like as juniors and seniors. UCLA is not back yet, man, but neither is the whole Pac-12. Almost the entire Pac-12 is down right now.
Yeah. Let's see. Another game to watch for is honestly going to be Florida, Kentucky. The reason I say this is because Florida is still working out kinks with Felipe Franks, trying to be a consistent quarterback. Kentucky, not been the best season for them, but they've still been consistent. They've still done a good job. Of course, beating Toledo week 1, beating Eastern Michigan last week, 38-17. This is going to be their first real SEC matchup. Last year, let's just kind of, they didn't do the best last year. Of course, they lost some of their star players on defense, but I think this is going to be a really big game for Kentucky. And honestly, Kentucky seems to do better in these type of performances than in smaller games. I would not be surprised, and I will just say if I had to pick one upset game of the week, this would be it. It would be Kentucky over Florida.
And the reason you're watching this game is because we want to see what Florida's offense looks like against a mid-tier team.
Yes.
Yeah, they did okay in the money game last week against UT Martin, but now that they're playing a more legitimate team in Kentucky, are they going to go back and look like they did against the Hurricanes? Or are they going to look like they did against UT Martin? This is kind of the tell week. If we see them blow out Kentucky, I'll say Florida's for real. If we see them kind of struggle a little bit, I'm going to tell you, don't bet on a team that ranked number 9. They're still not a competitor like everyone wants them to believe them to be. I'm going to say watch all the big boys. Oklahoma, Clemson, and Alabama all play mid-tier teams this week, with Oklahoma playing UCLA, Clemson playing Syracuse, who has played them tough in years past, and Alabama going up against South Carolina. Watch for every one of these games.
That's going to be a big game because there's a lot of history there. The last time South Carolina and Alabama faced, South Carolina won. And honestly, there's a lot of history there with even Will Muschamp playing Alabama. So there's a lot of history. I think it's going to be a lot of excitement. And, there's a lot of talented players from the state of Alabama that have gone to South Carolina. Has South Carolina played a great game this year? No. Of course, week 1 losing to North Carolina like I said they would. But when and teams like South Carolina who know they aren't really in the favor to win the East, this is really their national championship. This is their playoff game against Alabama. So don't be surprised if you see a South Carolina team come out hot, come out strong against Alabama. Alabama's, I think, definitely going to be able to cover the spread. But I will say I think we're going to see a different type of South Carolina team this week than we did week 1 against North Carolina.
Now, Jordan wants to know what do we think about the Lions game last week. Jordan, we talk about the NFL on Fridays, Sundays, and most of Tuesdays as well. I'll give you the short version, but if you want to hear more, we talked about the Lions on Sunday. They need to learn how to finish. They need to learn how to close out a game, because I think they were up at 19 at one point, and they've let the Arizona Cardinals come all the way back. Lions need to learn how to finish. Great start, terrible finish. This is still a team that's in rebuild mode. We'll move forward, though. A couple more of these comments here. Again, watch out for the big 3. Watch for Oklahoma, Clemson, and Alabama. We want to see how they do against mid-tier competition. If you see one blow everybody out, and then the other 2 kind of struggle, or vice versa, you're going to kind of get an idea of what to look forward to for the rest of the season.
Another game I really want to mention real quick is going to be Washington-Hawaii. Hawaii was a game week 1 against Arizona that I said watch out for, see what type of team Hawaii is. Hawaii looks to be a strong team this year. Washington coming off a loss last week against Cal at home. I'm looking for Washington to be ferocious in this game. Once again, this game's at home, but Washington has to win this game, sitting at 23 right now. So you have several Pac-12 teams in the lower 20s, the top 25. They're fighting for a top 10, and they're fighting for a Pac-12 championship. So I'm looking for Washington to be really strong in this game.
Also, Ian saying UCLA is giving away a bunch of free tickets to the Rose Bowl. Yeah. Look, Ian, I'll say this. It's a big stadium. It definitely is. You're not the first team to struggle to sell it out. I think the Chargers were in there for a little bit, or was it the Rams? It was the Rams that were in there for a little bit, and they had trouble selling it out as well. It's a huge stadium, and especially if you're not on top of your game, it's hard selling 80,000 tickets or whatever the Rose Bowl arena holds. I think it's like 80,000 and change.
I'll give you one more game to watch out for.
Go ahead.
USC BYU. Reason I say this, USC, of course, winning last week against Stanford. BYU, though, a team we saw week 1 against Utah, able to put up some defense here. I think it's going to be a close game. I have USC winning this. I think it's going to be a 7-10 point
Look
game.
at you stealing my thunder.
Oh, I did?
That's okay. Did we talk about UCF yet? That's another
No,
one I'm
yeah,
going to say
you
watch
can.
out for. UCF versus Stanford.
Yeah.
Even though Stanford lost the lead to USC last week in the Pac-12 South, I'm going to say watch out for this game because Stanford can get back on track with a win. And if UCF does not blow this team out, they're going to have no chance to make the playoffs again.
Yep.
The biggest criticism of UCF is they don't play anybody tough. If they don't play these teams like Stanford, and they have another one big next week that's a big game, if they don't play these teams and just blow them out of the water, that argument of they don't play any tough teams is going to stick around, and they're going to miss the playoffs again. Look for them to come out firing on all cylinders. I think UCF wins that one big. But Stanford, you never know. They could shock people who think they're going to go just overpower a team like UCF's going to overpower Stanford. We'll get to see on that one.
Yeah.
Now, Ian's saying USC 38, BYU 28, potentially. I think that's a good score, but watch out for
I
USC.
more 28-21.
A little lower scoring.
31-21 maybe. Did Stanford lose his quarterback?
I don't remember if they did, actually.
I think they got him.
With injury? I don't think they did, Cody. They might have, but I think they just lost the game against USC in embarrassing fashion.
I'm like, yeah, he's clear to come back.
At least when we're
they
go
did
ahead.
lose. It was. Let's see. Hold on.
And Jordan wants
a head
to know.
injury he had. He came back though. But Walker Little, that's the guy. Walker Little is out for the year. He's out with I believe a torn, leg injury, ligament. So, anyway, they thought he was going to miss 6 weeks. He's back. I mean, he'll be out the season, but their quarterback's been cleared. So
And Jordan wants to know what we think the score is going to be. Michigan State versus Arizona State. We need Michigan State to step up in this one. I'm going to say Michigan State 31, Arizona State 21.
Okay,
I think it's going to be a little closer.
I'll go 27-17.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close.
game.
I'm not going to tell you it's going to be a huge margin, but I think Michigan State needs to win this one if they want to have any hope of kind of hanging around in the Big Ten. If you lose to Arizona State, it's going to be hard to keep up with Penn State and Ohio State the way they're looking. And even Michigan's 2-0. My pick, still 2-0. At the very least, I think that's going to do it. I like the BYU pick. I think USC is going to have its hands full. They beat Tennessee. They hung with Utah. This is not a team that's just going to roll over.
They're a legit contender to win the Pac-12.
And if they lose, then it's still wide open in the South.
Well, it is. But, I mean, I think USC's in a good position to have – they came into the season a little unknown, which made them very underrated, which I think –
For the first time, like, ever.
Fire. Yes.
We're not talking about USC. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, USC's not been the same since Pete Carroll. So, I mean – the dynasty's kind of died there. Not saying it's not going to be able to be restored.
You mean Steve Sarkisian's not the best USC coach ever?
Imagine
no, I'm with
that.
you there. I'm with you there, 100%.
That. But what I'm saying is I think we're seeing a different type of USC than people thought, and they underrated them. And when you get some guys fired up about being underrated, a lot's going to be able to show. And I think this is going to be a big game for them to showcase who they truly are. Don't let it be a fluke against Stanford. If you're a USC player, you want to prove that you are worthy of a Pac-12 championship. Absolutely.
All right, now Nathan is taking Michigan State by 21. I don't think he's going to get that wide, but it'll be fun to watch. Also, Ian says the South is USC's to lose after beating Stanford. You are 100% right. That game, I think, decided the front runner for the early part of the season here. And Cody says, does Sparty have the offense to score 20-plus points?
I have them at 27.
Against Arizona State, I think they can get to about 30 in this kind of game against a legit contender.
Well, it just depends what type
not.
of defense comes out. Because if Michigan State's playing a really tough defense, then maybe just 21. But if you're playing a very sloppy defense, like we've seen this season, then maybe even 30-plus.
And that's a fair point. Jordan saying that the Big Ten is 1-10 against Pac-12 opponents. But I don't buy into conference versus conference because every team is different.
I don't either. I don't even buy in within conference and conference because
right.
it's game by game. And when you look at the SEC, I mean, just using them as an example, I mean, I would love to see, and honestly, I would love to see an Alabama, Georgia, week 1, week 2, being 100% healthy because we see them in the SEC championship game. To see an Alabama, South Carolina this early is going to be interesting to see what type of play they have because it's so hard, even with scheduling, to see these teams 100%. I mean, Florida, great example. Florida, the reason they did so poorly a couple of years ago in the SEC championship was because they got destroyed injury-wise at a home game against Florida State where like half their team got injured with knee injuries instead because of the rain and all the mud.
Keep going.
Okay, and so it's going to be...
You just learned to keep going.
Okay, I didn't know if that was you.
I don't know if they can hear it or not.
But what I'm saying is it's going to be interesting to see what happens in this game early on. So a lot of it's timing on games. So I'm not really a fan of, conference to conference. LSU, Texas is a great example. I mean, we see them later on this year. Texas may have won that game if they're healthier than LSU.
Especially if they leave the AC off.
I would love to see that. I mean, I would love to see Texas try to play with that AC.
Absolutely. I absolutely. I totally agree.
And the fact
with
they still lost is just karma. It's karma's a female dog.
Absolutely. Now, guys, we appreciate each and every one of your comments. It was a fun show. We appreciate you sticking with us. Sorry, we got a little derailed on the NCAA and the pay schematics and how everything works out there. But I think it was fun. I think it's a good conversation that needs to be had.
It wasn't. There's no hostility. The thing about sports.
I'm hostile.
Well, I'm
not.
In this
I'm
room.
not. Absolutely.
But the thing is it's always good to agree to disagree. But I think that when you have people who have different backgrounds, who come at it from different angles, then you're going to have these arguments. And it's a good conversation to have, because I promise you this is what the NCAA is having right now in their own conference rooms of trying to decide how we can make this work. Because the NCAA, they're a money-making organization. Yeah, they represent college athletes. They want to make money too. So they're going to try to find a way to make both parties happy and, try a way to still be involved. I just, as someone who is very much an in-depth thinker, I always think very much, okay, how can this affect everything else? So that was my angle. Okay, how is this going to affect the purity of the game, the way it's played, and the future of the game, rather than just saying, okay, athletes are to be played. Yeah, that's a good argument, maybe so, but it's just different. It's just a different conversation.
And I'm all for upsetting people and throwing schools off the mound of, hey, we're the only ones who can make money in this situation, but that's okay. We're not going to revisit it. One final thought that comes from Ian here. He says, it's funny that some Steelers fans want to fire Mike Tomlin and hire Nick Saban instead. Let me say this.
Nick Saban will never be back.
Nick Saban has his foot on the throat of college football right now. The only way you're going to get him to leave Alabama is to appeal to his sense of pride and say, look, Nick, when you were at the Dolphins, it didn't work out. Here's your chance to fix that. That's the only chance. That's the only chance.
Two things. I'll say two things about Nick Saban. One is Nick Saban has so much control, it's not even funny. He controls the University of Alabama. The University of Alabama does not control him. To go into the NFL, he's not going to get the control. When you're a college coach, you get to control the coaches, you get to control everything. In the NFL, you really control that's your one job. You don't get to control anything else. Nick Saban isn't like that. Secondly, people think Nick Saban is a Class A jerk. Now, let me go and tell you this. As someone who knows him personally, and as someone who has covered numerous games, if you ask the man a dumb question, you're going to get a dumb answer. If you ask him anything that A is already answered, or B, you know is going to fire the man up, don't be surprised if you get bit by the bear, or bit by the alligator, whatever you want to call it. Because, first off...
Bit by the elephant.
Well, yes, or stomped by the elephant. I will say this. At some point along Nick Saban's career, he realized that it's a game. It's a game of let me fire people up and let me be a publicity stunt for the university and, just kind of make everyone laugh. The problem is some of these reporters and people asking questions don't realize that they're the joke, that they're feeding into Nick Saban's joke of, oh my word, seriously, I don't understand that this is seriously not even real. So... we have dumb people asking dumb questions, get offended by his answer when really it's just a show, and, I mean, the fact that when you see Nick Saban say something really rude and then go, at the end, should prove to you that he's not really meaning what he's saying.
Fair point. I'm with you there. I think Nick Saban gets a bad rap, but to Ian's point, he says as a Feeler stand, he would say no after the stint in Miami. I'm going to say no because people are giving up on Mike Tomlin.
Yes, I agree.
As soon as all the talent has left the team. Mike Tomlin, it's not his fault that Antonio Brown kind of has self-destructed. Le'Veon Bell wanted to get paid and he wanted to go somewhere else. At the end of the day, you got to look at the GM for that. It's Mike Tomlin's job to coach the guys who are there, and the roster is taking a significant step back. You don't turn on the coach because the roster took the significant step back. You got to wait it out. He's a two-time Super Bowl winner. He's still a great coach. Even though I think he's going to struggle against Bill Belichick going forward, you got to stick with Mike Tomlin because there's 25 other teams that would like to have Mike Tomlin as their head coach right now in the NFL.
And the thing is this. I mean, you have some coaches in the NFL that won't make good college coaches, and vice versa. You have some college coaches who won't make good NFL coaches. I think Nick Saban could be both. I think you look at how he was a coach in Miami.
I'm going to say it's Miami.
Well,
it's Miami.
That,
come on.
But he's a completely different coach now than he was then. I think Nick Saban would make a phenomenal coach. I think he's a lot like Bill Belichick. Of course, his master, his mentor, whoever you want to call it, his best friend that has poured into him. I think if Nick Saban went anywhere, he would go to the Patriots. Because I think you see a guy...
that's not going to happen as long as Bill Belichick wants to stay there. But you're right.
He would pass it down.
I think he would try to
pass it down to
I honestly don't think so. I think the ego would kind of get in the way there, and he would say, I don't want to go pick up after Bill Belichick, because if you're worse, everyone's going to say, oh, look, you ruined the franchise. If you're the same, everyone's going to say Bill Belichick has set the way for you.
Bill Belichick has so much power
that
he would be like, all right, here's Nick Saban. Nick Saban's so used to the power, and Nick Saban's so used to the type of play the Patriots play. I think that's what I'm saying. It would be the easiest transition for him. But honestly,
that would be an easy transition.
I don't think we'll ever see Nick Saban in the NFL again.
I don't either. When you're killing the game in college, you're being paid that kind of money. You're being paid more than almost any NFL coach anyway.
Like, you're getting paid more, you have more power, and honestly, you have more freedom. Shoot, you'd be a fool to go.
The only thing I can see is the appeal to the ego, and say, it might be a step back in pay, but you've made a lot of money. Who cares, right?
Let's just think of one right now who coached in college who is doing, we'll say, semi-decent NFL.
Pete Carroll.
Yep. Why?
Best example.
Why do you think?
Because he's a good organization. He moved into a good organization that likes to build on defense, and they hit on the quarterback.
It was the perfect timing.
They hit on the quarterback.
They were desperate. They were desperate for Pete Carroll when they got him.
There are desperate NFL teams that would take Nick Saban in a heartbeat.
What I'm saying,
Cincinnati
it was the perfect storm. It was a perfect way for Pete Carroll to leave USC, go straight into Seattle. And the thing is this, he honestly, I know it's a different league, but he stayed within the same conference, right? So he had the experience of having the Pac-12, knowing the environment, knowing how the ebbs and flows. Nick Saban, the man's just old-fashioned. The man likes to sit at home eating a little Debbie cake and drinking a Coke on the front porch. He's living life. He's got a lake house. His family's happy. His family's living in Tuscaloosa. I think it would take a lot, and I think it's going to take more than just money. It's going to take power for him to ever consider going back to the NFL.
Nathan says, if your name's not Shula, you don't stand a chance in Miami. Normally, I would totally agree with you, but with Tom Brady getting older, and now all of a sudden you got all these first-round picks hanging around, I like what Miami's doing. I think that maybe Brian Flores is the guy. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's the next coach who comes in. Ty, good to see you, man. I love that you're catching us right at the end. We're glad you're here, man. But I'll say this, at least for Miami, I would consider bringing Nick Saban back if I could do it. I think there's enough bad blood that would never happen. He'd go to another NFL franchise before that. If I'm the Cincinnati Bengals, if I am any team that's at the bottom, even Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I would make the appeal to the ego and say, hey, look, it didn't work out last time. Here's your chance to make it right.
Who's one current, I can't say current anymore. Who's one former, recent, current head college football coach that you think could make a transition?
Right now, I think Lincoln Riley would be great. I think he's Cliff Kingsbury should be.
Not current.
Not current.
Very, very formerly current.
Are we talking about in the past who would make a good NFL coach?
Like the last 6 months was a head coach.
Oh, well, there's not a lot of names. There's not a lot of guys that
Urban Meyer.
are well, I don't even think Urban Meyer would be that good. I don't think Urban Meyer... I think Urban Meyer thrives because he's able to out-recruit people.
Yes,
I think he's a good coach. But I don't think Urban Meyer's going into a fair environment like the NFL and succeeding.
But I think he would be semi-decent is what I'm saying. I don't think it would be a great first year, second year, third year, but I think he, long-term... could be okay.
I think in the NFL you have to deal with a lot of adversity because you don't always have the best roster. You need to coach people up.
For him to go to Florida, he coached at 2 prime colleges.
And then ran out every time things started to fall apart.
Well, that's a control freak issue, and that's one reason why the NFL is perfect. But the LSU, obviously Nick Saban won the national championship. There's a lot of bad blood there. That's one reason why the rival is so heated. LSU, Alabama, which I'm excited to go to Baton Rouge this year and actually get to see a LSU game at home. But... what I'm saying is it's very rare that you see a good NFL and a good college coach that are able to do both well because